Hello, this is Miss Dagenford, and I wanted in this lesson to delve deeper into photosynthesis. And at the very beginning, I'm going to tell you I want you to be listening for three things. So perk your ears up. I want you to find three things. I want you to focus on what sunlight does, what an electron does, and then what we can do with that electron. So sunlight, electron, and what we can do with that. So that's your goal. That's what you're listening for. And then what we're going to start with is just, clearing up some of the major players again. So where we left off with the previous lesson, we did the photosynthesis overview. And you would have just done your Google form, which goes over all of those introductory pathways. Just a nice introduction to photosynthesis. And so we have the light-dependent reaction that occurs on the thylakoid membrane. And then we went over last Thursday the light-independent. We went over the reactants and the products, what we see at the end point of them. So what we're going to look at today would be the details in them. Now, before we get into that, we need to just go over some vocabulary. What you're going to see in the thylakoid would be things called photosystems. Now, photosystems are nothing more than chlorophyll molecules cradled in a bunch of proteins. And the proteins are kind of holding them together. So what I did is I pulled a diagram that kind of shows what they look like actually. And you can see it kind of looks like a bit of jumbled mess. All of these molecules kind of piled in the thylakoid membrane. And we have chlorophylls, and we have fucoxanthin, and then diadonoxaxin. Sorry, that word is a tongue twister. And all of these pigments in amongst these proteins. What is often then shown would be this blobby protein or set of proteins, and then we have all of the chlorophyll molecules. And so that is sufficient. I don't need you to know all the details, but sometimes when I only show the artist's representation, I end up sometimes getting students asking me, well, there are green dots. Like, what's with the green dots? So just understand that the green dots are chlorophyll molecules, and the purple in the background would be a series of proteins that are kind of holding it in. So that's what photosystems contain, and that's it. So if you were to say chlorophyll pigments, from a functional standpoint, that's what we're looking at. What is the chlorophyll doing? Now, we have two photosystems, photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. Now, they both absorb sunlight. The difference would be a slight variation in what wavelength of light they absorb, but the other difference was when they were discovered. Photosystem 2 was discovered second. Photosystem was discovered first. Now, the annoying thing about that is photosystem 2 is the first one that we look at. And that it annoyed me in high school, it annoyed me in college, and it's still annoying to teach, but that's what we're stuck with. Because it was discovered second, it got named photosystem 2. So I wanted to show you a little demo. I have a cup of spinach leaves that have been blended as if I was going to make a smoothie, but no one would want to drink this smoothie. It's rubbing alcohol. But this would be a suspension of chlorophyll molecules. Now you can see it kind of has a really dark, it's dark green, but maybe the camera doesn't show it well. But this is dark green. And then if I were to shine a UV light on it, I'm hoping you notice there's a really good, I'm hoping, view. I can see it really well, but the UV light is shining on the chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll fluoresces red. And the reason it fluoresces red is because the chlorophyll, remember, is absorbing those wavelengths of light. And the reason it fluoresces is because we've kind of taken chlorophyll out of the system. And so all of these electrons are absorbing the energy, and the electrons boost up, and then the electrons release the energy as they kind of fall back down into chlorophyll. Well, we see that as fluorescence. But for the plant, that's going to be really key. Remember what's happening with the light and what's happening with the electrons. So let's go ahead and tackle that. Now, in our light dependent reaction, what we end up having would be the photosystem 2 with our chlorophyll molecules. The energy from sunlight excites the electrons in chlorophyll. And it excites a particular electron in a particular place. But what's unique about this electron is it gains so much energy that it can actually jump out, and it jumps to the electron transport chain. Now, the electron transport chain is exactly what it says. It's a chain of molecules that, amazingly enough, transport electrons. And it just shuttles back down the line of electron transport carriers. Now, chlorophyll has just lost an electron, and molecules don't tend to do well with that. So we need replacement electrons. And where we're going to get replacement electrons from, well, water is an abundant source of electrons. So there's an enzyme that literally dismantles water, especially with light. Light helps that as well. Water gets split apart into oxygen gas, hydrogen ions, and electrons. Now, my diagram was getting really tiny, so I couldn't really fit it on here, but these two little yellow dots would be electrons. And now the last point we want to consider is what's going to happen to our energized electron. And as it's popping in and out of these molecules, those molecules get a little bit of energy. It would be like if I passed around $1 in class, whoever has the dollar has a little bit more money. Well, these molecules, once they accept that energized electron, those molecules have that little tiny bit of energy. So remember what's happening with the sunlight. The sunlight energy gets absorbed by the electron. What was my second point? What's happening to the electron? Well, the energized electron is popping from molecule to molecule. There's going to be something interesting happening to the second molecule here in the electron transport chain, and that is we can actually actively transport hydrogen ions across the membrane into this space. Now, this is going to happen over and over and over again. Sunlight energy gets absorbed, an electron gets energized, an electron pops out, boom, boom, into the second molecule. The second molecule is going to actively pump hydrogens across, and then this happens again. Electron gets excited by the sunlight energy, jumps out, boom, boom, hydrogen ion gets pumped across, actively transported. And as this keeps happening, you keep getting more and more hydrogen ions. Now, remember my 3 points. What's happening to the sunlight energy? Sunlight energy gets absorbed by the electron. What's my second point? What's happening to the electron? The electron gets excited, it gets energized, it gets passed along. And as it gets passed along, what was my third point? What can we do with that electron? Well, one of the things we can do is actively pump hydrogens into the thylakoid space. So that's going to be our stage 1. Now, we're not quite done with that because we want to figure out what's happening to our hydrogen ions. So the second part of our light dependent would be photosystem 1, and it's somewhat a repeat. Energy gets absorbed from sunlight, the electron gets excited, and the electron jumps out and jumps to the electron transport chain or system. But this time, what we're going to do is capture that energized electron in another molecule called NADP plus. That NADP plus is going to take that electron and a hydrogen and become NADPH. Now, it's a ridiculously crazy looking molecule. I can show it to you if you really want, and it has a ridiculously sounding name: nicotinamide dinucleotide phosphate. That's why we call it NADPH. Now, as exalted as its name sounds and as crazy as it looks, NADPH has a simple role. It's a dump truck. NADH acts to ferry and carry an electron and hydrogen back and forth. So it's going to take a high energy electron with a hydrogen, and it's going to take it to the Calvin cycle that we're going to look at later. But it's a dump truck that carries energy. That's really all it is. And so it's going to go back and forth with electrons, and then just like a dump truck, it's going to dump the electrons and hydrogens. Where it's going to dump, that's what we're going to look at. So what would be our main things that we want to take away? Remember what's happening with the sunlight, what's happening with the electron, and then what can we do with that electron? Sunlight excites an electron, it gains energy, it bops down the electron transport chain, and because it has energy, it can fuel the active transport of hydrogen. The second stage of our electron transport, or light dependent, would be the same, where the electron gets excited by another photon of sunlight, and then the energized electron joins with a hydrogen and NADP plus to make NADPH. Now, let's finish up with talking about our ATP production. Really, really cool little thing. We're going to watch this video in class. The photosystem 2's job is to build up hydrogen ions, and they're basically positive charges. Now, we're building up a high concentration. A high concentration wants to diffuse. Now, if we gave it a way to diffuse, it's going to diffuse. We got a high concentration wanting to go to a low concentration. Now, what we see is this really wild little molecule called ATP synthase. And ATP synthase, its job, it's going to spin as the hydrogens go through it. And as it spins, it's going to be able to connect ADP and phosphate. We've just converted a low energy molecule to a high energy molecule. So what did we do with sunlight? We captured the energy into an electron. What did that electron do? That electron powered the transport of hydrogens. Now we can finish it up. What do the hydrogens do? The hydrogens are going to diffuse down their gradient through this little turbine that can connect ADP to ATP. And now we've got our high energy molecule. Now we don't have glucose yet, and so the question then becomes, where do we get our glucose from? What's happening there? And that'll be another video. So right now you're going to practice. This is something that needs practice. So I've got another video that helps us work through our Jamboards. So hope this helps. And we'll talk about the little ATPase in our Jamboard.